Firstly, I would just like to welcome some of our new young people who are joining us this morning. We've got Isa Santos, and also we have Charlotte Clem and Cameron Simmons from Larbert High School. We will formally go through the process as we go through the agenda, but just welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. I hope you enjoy the committee today, and we look forward to your contributions as we go forward. Move into the formal business, and do we have any apologies?
Yes, Convener, we have apologies from Karen Trocek and from Meryl Stevenson.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, no indications. Thank you. The minute of the meeting of the Education, Children and Young People's Executive held on the 1st of June. The minutes are before us. Are we happy to accept those as a true record?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Is there anything in the minute that requires feedback that's not within the papers today? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the rolling action log. Colin?
Yes, thank you, Convener. As usual, the rolling action log is there for information of members of the executive and also an opportunity to ask questions on any of those items.
Is there anything anybody wishes to raise in relation to the rolling action log? No. No. Okay, thank you. We'll move into our first agenda item, which is the membership of the Education, Children and Young People's Executive, and I'll go to Colin.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And this is a short formal report, primarily in the report to appoint Isa Santos as the care experienced young person on the executive. But following the issue of the agenda, we also received notice that the two student representatives had been nominated from Larbert High School, who are Charlotte Clem, who's with us on the call, and Cameron Simmons. So I would also ask the committee to formally appoint them to the membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Colleagues, are we happy to formally accept?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Not wishing to put any of our young folks on the spot, but is there anything any of them would want to say at this point? Don't feel compelled to, but you were very welcome to make a few comments or perhaps tell us a little bit about yourselves. No, I understand if it's a bit too early, but very welcome to you. Okay, we move on to item 6, which is the Early Learning and Childcare 1140 expansion update. And this is our resident report, and we have Gary Greenhorn, who is going to take us through this. Gary?
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Chair, members may wish to note that this is the 24th of such resident reports that we've done since 2017. The purpose of the report, there's 4 M's set out today. They are set out in section 1.1. There are 5 recommendations set before the executive today, and they are outlined in section 2.1. The national aim is outlined in section 3.1, and just to remind the executive today that Falkirk had already met the target of delivering 1140 hours of early learning childcare to our young people ahead of the August 21 deadline through a blended model approach. In terms of the local context, there's a number of challenges we've experienced over the summer period, mainly COVID driven, that were alluded to at the last meeting. There's been some issues with material procurement deliveries for our contractors and subcontractors. There's been a number of frustrations on site, and there's been a number of contingencies that have had to be put in place. All of these are out with the control of officers who, I'd have to say, have worked tirelessly over the summer period to mitigate and help support and try to move along the infrastructure progress that we have. However, the COVID position has been challenging for us all, and indeed it was reported to the Council Executive meeting the 24th of August in the Capital Programme update that a number of capital projects were also experiencing the same challenges that we had. It has impacted on progress, there's no doubt about it. It's very difficult for the team over the summer period to feel not frustrated by this, but what we shouldn't lose sight of over the period is the significant achievements that we've made over the last 3 to 4 years, and to remind everyone that the finishing post is nearly there. At the time of writing the report in section 4.1, there were 7 outstanding projects there. I'm very pleased to report to the executive this morning that we have already delivered on Carn Primary School, and that was operational over the last 2 weeks, so we're down to 6. And I was very pleased to say that on Friday we took the handover.
Sorry, convener,
from...
I can't hear. Sorry, Gary, I can't hear you properly. You seem to be really quiet. I don't know if your microphone could be nearer to your mouth. I'm not really getting any volume through. Just a little, very low. Sorry.
I will try that. Is that any better?
Perfect, Gary.
Okay. There is Wi-Fi problems in the office this morning, so I'll do my best and hopefully we'll get there. I'm just saying that it was difficult for the team not to be frustrated over the summer period, but I'm just trying to remind everyone that we shouldn't lose sight of the tremendous work that's taken place over the last 3 to 4 years, and to say that the finishing post is in sight. At the time of writing the report, there were 7 outstanding projects. I'm very pleased to tell the executive this morning that Carn Primary School ELCC has been handed over and indeed is operational. So we're down to 6. On Friday, we also took handover at King Lass out at Bo'ness, and the staff will be in this week kitting it out, and we hope to open that centre next week. So again, we're down to 5. The Callendar Park project, we're waiting for Scottish Power. Again, some of the frustrations and challenges we've had around trying to get the utility providers to come in to do a little work. They're under tremendous pressure, as you would imagine. It's been well reported in the national press about that. So once we get Scottish Power in, there's 2 weeks delay, and then that will be available for handover as well. In terms of section 4.2, the deferred place pilot, section 4.2 just summarises that we have 100 more young people than we would normally expect in our system just now, because of the agreement to allow parents to opt to defer a year for their child. We've currently got 235 children that are taking advantage of that deferred scheme, 100 more than normal. Officers are currently assessing the impact that this is having in some areas, and we're looking to see what we can do in the coming months ahead to see if we can increase capacity in some of these sites. There'll be a reminder that the government gave us £800,000 of funding to help progress that pilot exercise. Section 4.3 looks at some of our early intervention strategies. 431 looks at the continuation of the work done in conjunction with the Scottish Childminding Association, the SCMA, to try to get a wider, more community-based focus for some of our childminders. That work is also looking to target specifically our rural areas to see if we can support some of the needs of our families in those areas as well. Currently, we have a total of 82 childminders. It changes all the time. Some childminders leave, and we try to get others in. So at the moment, we've got 82 that are in partnership with us. 432 looks at the positive work. Members may recall they agreed to put some resources in to create the CARE group, a multi-service approach to early intervention to try to look at meeting the needs of our under 5s and their associated families. Since its inception in June, positive progress has been made. 15 children and indeed families have been supported since there. A couple of examples of support: it could be temporary placement at an ELC centre, it could be advice from ASN workers, the provision of specialist equipment, or indeed family support, or indeed a range of all of them. So thank you for supporting this initiative. It is at its inception, but we hope to make sure that there's positivity as we continue with it in the coming months.
4.4 looks at the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snack Scheme. Falkirk successfully introduced on time a registration and a payment system for set up for the 1st of August. The payment periods are 3 payment periods over the next year. They're outlined in the first bullet point. The local funding rate of 35.4 pence was set nationally, and that allows us to pay our registered childcare providers that money per day per child, and that enables them to continue to offer free milk to the children that are in their settings, and also to provide a healthy snack as well. To date, we've paid out £71,000 across 82 providers from the £179,000 of ring-fence funding the government gave us for that particular project. 4.5 looks at the sustainable rate payment to private sector. Members will recall it was agreed at the last meeting in June that the Director would have delegated authority over the summer to set these rates. The rates have been set and they're outlined in that section. I would have to say that in terms of the Scottish Government, they've done a recent benchmarking exercise and it shows Falkirk in the upper quartile. In fact, Falkirk are in the top 5 of the payments to our partner nursery providers. So again, testimony to the work that we've done with the sector. The Falkirk's rates are very favourable compared to the national ones. And indeed, they're very closely aligned to some of our RIC colleagues in terms of Stirling. They're exactly the same as Stirling, and they're very closely aligned to Clackmannan councils as well. 4.6, I'm very pleased to bring forward proposed name changes for 2 of our new establishments that are coming on stream very soon. Callender Park, the proposed name is Woodlands ELCCC, and Kinglass is Boriston out in Bo'ness for ELCC. So the proposal to get agreement from the members today are those 2 new names. Turning now to the financial implications that are laid out in section 6.1. The revenue programme just now is expected to project an underspend of around about £300,000. We'll have to tell members that underspend is likely to grow because we've got a number of COVID costs that are included in there, and we've currently just we're doing a bit of work with finance just now to remove the COVID costs that are in the sector to charge them to the COVID monies that we've got from the government. That will give us propensity and it'll give us a bit of pragmatism, so that should we incur any additional capital costs in the months ahead because of the COVID challenges we've got money in the revenue budget that we can move across to capital. I would remind members in saying and doing that both of these funds are ring fenced. I would also update members to say that the Scottish Government have also agreed to have another year of ring fencing of this money. We had thought that the money would be mainstreamed in 22-23. The government have intimated that they're going to continue with ring fencing in 22-23 and then undertake a process of mainstreaming in 23-24. One of the things that we're asking for today is just to note that approval we carry forward 2.25 million of funds at the year end, which was entirely expected, and we are earmarking that for our capital projects. The capital projects for the current year gives us a budget of £7.65 million. I said earlier on, I'm expecting additional underspend in the revenue budget throughout the course of this year, and that again will give us that propensity to make sure that should there be any costs, additional costs incurred in the capital sector, and we can meet that with the revenue budget, and that's entirely allowed under the rules of the ring fencing. In terms of the challenges that have been set out, again I've highlighted that the risk of COVID remains an issue for us. Unfortunately, we have realised a number of these challenges over the summer. However, we've progressed them really well, working with contractors, subcontractors, development services and also corporate service staff to try to get us over the line. We are nearly there. In conclusion, at section 7, I cannot stress highly enough the work the officers have done over the summer period to make sure that we've tried to combat some of the COVID and material challenges on site, to work progressively and positively with all the contractors involved to try to get these projects over the line. Frustrated, yes, at times, but rest assured the determination and aspiration to deliver a quality product for Falkirk remains there. Appendix 1 shows a summary of the projects that are in place. It gives updated timelines at the time of writing, and I would again remind members today that the Kinglass ELC Centre was handed over on Friday and hopefully will open next week, and the Cairn Primary School work is already open, and just to say to members that now we're coming to the end of some of the COVID challenges we've got. The teams will shortly be inviting all local members to take them around all the local ELC establishments so they can view at first hand how positive these establishments look and the work across all the sectors that we've done to make sure that we can deliver a quality product. So those invites will be coming out to all local members, and I hope each and every one of you take us up on that offer and see at first hand the job that's been done. And it's a testimony to everyone here for the support you've given us over the couple of years. Thank you. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Gary, and I too hope that members will take the opportunity to go round the ELCs, because I think that has been a tremendous achievement, and some of the facilities are absolutely state of the art. But I'll go to Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, convener. Just to say that I seem to have lost a bit of my voice this morning. Some people will be happy about that. So I'll not be saying very much because we've got quite a full agenda. Just really to say thanks to everyone involved in pushing these projects. We can't underestimate the pressures that have been out there and the hurdles that some of our staff and contractors and all the goings-ons in between have had, and they've pulled the stops out at every point possible, and it's been really, really difficult. And we're doing it, and they're getting as many projects across that line, and it's just brilliant. I'd also like to thank the early years staff, because I believe once these centres are ready, you know, there's a lot of work then to be done, and it's got to be done very quickly to get these nurseries set up so we can get our children into their brand new centres. And the flurry of Twitter the week, you know, leading up to the term starting was unbelievable. My phone was pinging constantly, and it was just brilliant to see in the first week of term for some of the new centres for all the nurseries and schools, of course, opening was just fantastic. I think people are really, although a lot of pressure, a lot of hard work, but they're really appreciating the new centres that they've got, and they were really welcoming the children back, and I think our children have been really happy to be back. So it's been excellent, but I do want to put on record the amount of hard work that's went in through staff throughout this service, so thank you everyone. Other than that, I'll move the report, and if anyone has got any questions, then I'm quite sure Mr. Greenhorn will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Adana. And I think that the sore throats and the voices seem to be doing the rounds just now, I'm afraid. Councillor Colley.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Gary, for removing your headphones, because I could actually hear you after that, so that was great. I think just to echo very much what Adana is seconding this, just echoing what Adana's been saying, the huge amount of work that's gone in. It's massive amounts of work in developing this and developing these fantastic enriching environments for children, alongside actually creating a lot of new jobs in our area for early years staff. And I think you know, looking at some of the options around deferred placements, using childminders, about really delivering that choice for families and best options for their children. So I can't say how much I appreciate the amount of work that's going on, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to go and to see the local developments in my ward. Really looking forward to that, and great to see that Denny's will be just about over the line in December. I know there's been a lot of challenges involved in that, so I'd just like to formally second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Colley. Got Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, convener. Just a question for Gary. Gary, you alluded to the fact that you're anticipating an underspend as far as the revenue budget's concerned, and you were saying that you're thinking that this is going to grow quite a bit. Bearing in mind the situation we're in with Brexit and COVID, there is probably going to be increased costs from developers in that respect. Is there any indication yet at this point as to what that increase is likely to be? in relation to the completed projects, and obviously the 6 projects that are still ongoing. There could very well be increased costs involved in that as well. Do we know where we are in respect to these situations?
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Nimmo. And again, that's a question that we're asking ourselves all the time. It's a very good question. The short answer is we don't know where we'll be with the cost just now, because a lot of the contracts mean that when they get to the end of the completed contract, they can put extra cost in for any unforeseen circumstances that have been developed on site. And that's why I've said all along, Councillor Nimmo, and to other members of the exec, that our aim here is to deliver the whole project and the overall quantum of resources we've got. And we have had to utilise some of the revenue monies we've had to put into capital, which we are allowed to do, and we've said that all along. So certainly at the moment, what I will do is at the next update paper, I think scheduled for November, we should have a better position. In terms of the ledger spend this year, the ledger spend for the current financial year only shows about 3.8 million of spend. But again, the contractors, there's always a delay in the spend coming through. Hopefully get to November, I'll be able to give you a more definitive and updated position on that. It's a good question. I've not lost sight of it in the future reports, and I'll try to bring that information to you and answer it at a future date. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Gary. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. As Gary says, great work done by the whole team over the last few years, especially during the pandemic, and to achieve what we have achieved is remarkable. With 5 of the present early learning centres still to get completed. My first question, Convener, is to Gary, is the current costs 500,000 plus. So when we had 7, we had potentially 3.5 million plus. Yeah, the revenue and capital of 25.8 million. And I don't know if you kind of ticked it off with Alan's question, the previous. I would like to see, since we're getting less and less early learning years centres still to open, I would like to see a more comprehensive figure of what we've still to spend. It doesn't need to be to the last pound, but if we've got an incline to what it's going to be for the last 5, and probably for the last one for West Quarter. I know we've not got a time scale or a cost, but come November, hopefully Gary will be able to give us that detail at that time, Convener. But I would that be something that we could do for November, Gary? Get a cost for the last 5 early learning centres?
I think your point's well made, Councillor Kerr, and if you recall, Councillor Kerr, I think it was you that had asked initially to bring some cost base into the appendices we gave. So we tried to do it on probably a parameter based thing. So I think what I will do for November is try to expand on that to show both you and the point that Councillor Nimmo raised, so there's a bit more clarity, and there should be clarity as we move to the end of some of these projects, to be perfectly honest. In terms of the question about West Quarter, Councillor Kerr, the West Quarter one is an interesting one. We are due to extend that school anyway, and part of the school extension will include any support and increased capacity for the early years one. It would be wrong for us to do it out with that and then have to change your design plan. So I think this is all about an integrated approach. We know we've got to extend the school, so let's look at the early years part when we're extending the school. That way it brings a number of things. It brings economy of scale, and also brings a one design approach to suit that school individually. So I'm happy to bring that additional information that you suggested to the November committee. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Gary, and that's reasonable. answer. Regarding the other early learning centres, how many more is there apart from the ones that's in the report that's not been started yet, or we've not even looked at yet? Everything else?
There's nothing else other than the ones in the report to be done, Councillor Kerr. So the report shows 7. I've already said that the Cairn one is now delivering. Again, it's a real-time report, so you write it in advance, and I'm very pleased to say that Cairn's now open and delivering. Next week we'll have Kinglass up, and then they'll be down to 5. The only one that is a question mark just now, as you said quite rightly, is the one up at the one you mentioned earlier on. So hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks' time, Calendar Park will also be open as well, and then we'll be down to 4, excluding the West Quarter.
Thanks for that, Gary. And if nobody's been to see these early learning centres, I had the privilege to get to see a couple that wasn't even in my ward, but I was able to, and they're absolutely stunning. State-of-the-art facilities for our kids, and I think that as a council and a community, we should be very proud of these centres, and if we can enhance their education, well, we should be. The other one for me, Gary, is on page 21, the Fair Places plot pilot. We're seeing that there's 100 additional children, but we're seeing there's 235. Where's the other 135? Have they not got a place yet?
Councillor Kerr, everyone has got a place in terms of it. What we normally deal with every year is the deferred pilot, if you remember, Councillor Kerr, and I think you showed your support for it at the time, was that we were allowing all parents just to make that decision. And because it was being advertised nationally, we expected an increase. What we've done over the last couple of years is we've always accommodated about 135 children. But because of this new development, there's another 100 came in over and above what we have expected. So all 235 have been accommodated. I was just flagging up to the executive that we've got 100 more children in the early years system that would not ordinarily have been in primary 1 this year than we can expect. So what we're looking at is, again, we didn't know that. A lot of what we've got is crystal ball and a crystal ball. However, when we see the results coming to fruition, we look back at it, and then what we try to do is look at any capacity pressures that are being experienced in certain of the establishments, and we can use some of the government money to help alleviate that in the weeks and months ahead. So we've started that work now. I'd have to say we're not finished it, but we're looking at it to see what we can do.
Great, Gary, and I'm supporting the scheme because I feel it's a parent's prerogative if they think that their child is ready or not. My last question, Gary, is the money for the Scottish Government, 800,000, will that cover the extra 100 children as well?
It does cover the additional cost that we've got, Councillor Kerr, and there's still some money that we can use out the 100,000 to help alleviate some capacity pressures in the system as well. So,
thank you very much, Gary, once again. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. Okay, I've got Councillor Harris, then Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Gary, for your report, and echo what James says about the success in delivering the 1140 and all the facilities for them. Just a question around 4.3 on page 21. Can you just remind me what our target figure was for the number of community childminders at the start of the project?
We'd hoped to get initially we'd hoped to get 70, then it was up to 100, Councillor Harris. So we're still working on that just now to try to increase the numbers. What we expect, to be perfectly honest, is as the COVID pressures ease, we expect more childminders to come into partnership with us. There are a number of challenges that are out there in the sector just now, so certainly we're above the number we had initially targeted for, but again we've set our aspiration high and we're trying to get some more into the system to give parents more of a choice in the places for their children.
Thanks, Gary. Just another point on, it's actually at the end of the report on the risks. And it's down to the last 3 points, and it kind of ties in what Councillor Nimmo was saying. Potential disruption to supply chain or due to price inflation. So the risk is identified as a potential, but in fact, we know that this risk is real. So I just wonder whether we're actually making a proper risk analysis of this. And as Alan Nimmo pointed out, there are real inflationary increases, 7.2% increase, annual increase in the cost of timber, steel and aggregates since the first quarter of this year. And I think to kind of blame it all on Brexit has been a bit simplistic. There are multi-factors involved here in terms of the supply. For example, it's anticipated that the global demand for timber will outstep the actual supply in this year. Some of that's to do with enormous increase in house building in the United States. Other factors such as shipping lanes being completely busy due to demand for manufactured goods. In the major ports around the world, there's been a lot of bottlenecks because ships have had to wait to dock, or they've had to be diverted. So unloading times and loading and unloading times have gone up by 200%. And that was exacerbated by the blockage of the Suez Canal. We've got global container shortages, and container freight rates have quadrupled. So there are real inflationary pressures here, and I just wonder whether we've taken cognizance of that. This is a risk, and I'm not sure that the risk analysis as presented here actually represents a proper figure. As I say, I think just to kind of to link it to Brexit is being a bit simplistic. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, the point you made is well made. There are a number of risks that are in the system just now, and some of these have been borne out. Unfortunately, I can't tell you when we talk to contractors, they talk about materiality, procurement, COVID and Brexit. However, behind the scenes, there'll be a number of other factors at play that have led to that material shortage being experienced on site, a number of which you've certainly alluded to. Certainly what I said to Councillor Nimmo in response to his point earlier is we'll try to tease out this a bit more in the November report. The problem is just now that I've not got all the details of all that additional cost, because at the moment our focus has purely been to get these things, the projects over the line. And I think over the summer when we see the challenges we've had to overcome some of the challenges in materiality, has been testimony to the work the staff have done in conjunction with our contractors and subcontractors to turn up all the stops to get these things over the line. But I'm not in any way diminishing the point. I'll try to put a bit more information in the next report to provide some more meat on the bone, shall we say.
No, thank you for that, Gary, and thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Nigel. And I think it's undoubtedly, while maybe not everything can be put at the door of Brexit, that has compounded some of the supply issues that we've had. Okay, I've got Councillor Munro, and then I've got Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to ask about the deferred places scheme, Gary. Tell me, was it the case previously that you only had maybe 15 young people who asked for deferred places, or did I pick that up wrong?
Councillor Munro, that normally over the last couple of years we've had about 135,
But
or between
before
100
that,
and 135 children that have deferred in the system. This year,
Right.
because we've run with the pilot, we've got 235, so it's an increase of 100 from what we'd experienced before.
right, and this,
The 15 you referred to was the number of care children, the number of children that were supported by the care initiative in the paper.
thank you. Can you tell me whether this 800,000 was for 1 year or for 2? Because it doesn't make clear, and it's the only financial you have in this particular paper, in this particular.
Okay, I apologise if it's not clear in the paper, but it does say that it's over 2021 and 21-22. It's £800,000 for those 2 financial years, Councillor Munro.
Right, so effectively, during those 2 years on this scheme, we're accommodating an additional 100 children for which we need classrooms and staff, and presumably if children defer a year, it means effectively that they will go through school a year behind or later, and therefore will actually effectively do an additional year overall. Is that not the case? So how do we sort of cover all the costs of that 100 extra children in classrooms and things within 400,000 a year?
Okay, Councillor Munro, good question. The challenge here is not so much creating extra classrooms, because the classrooms are finite. We've got a number of classrooms. Excuse me. What some of the cost has been is over the period of the COVID, we've had to create a number of bubbles for children. So sometimes we've had to bring in extra staff to meet the demands of those children. There's extra staff being brought in terms of the overall quantum of children as well into the system. So I have to say we've not had to create any extra classes, because classes are learning spaces are there anyway. But certainly some of the cost has been spent on bringing extra staff to meet with that demand. And you're right, depending on when the children come into the system, they will go through effectively another year of the system, assuming that they go right through all the education system.
So if this scheme were to continue, then we would have that additional pressure every year. I mean, at the moment you say it's a pilot.
We would have additional cost pressures for the early years sector every year, Councillor Munro, and that's why the government are doing a pilot study just now, because what the government are trying to do is actually ascertain the answers to that question you've raised. How much additional money do they have to give local authorities in order to provide that deferred place? So the government don't know all answers to it, but we're working very closely with them over the course of last year, this year, and indeed they're looking to bring a number of other pilot authorities into the system this year. So they'll be assessing all the data, and the government have already agreed that they'll be putting extra money into the system to cope with those additional early years costs going forward. We just don't know the quantum of that at this precise moment in time.
So if you can still accommodate these children within the capacity in the new early years, what are the modular units going into schools that you've listed in Appendix 1, and what are they for, and are these late additions, or were they costed for before?
No, Councillor Munro, all the plans that are in Appendix 1 are for the overall early years expansion. A lot of the expansion stuff was done before we had the deferred places pilot. So all we're saying is that on top of the quantum of throughput of children that we knew, there's an extra 100 in the system that we're coping with just now. However, if there is any tweaks that we can make to the capacity of an individual school, the tweaks to early years capacity have got to be increased by 8, because that is the adult ratios that would involve. So if we can increase capacity in certain establishments by 8, we would try to do that. So all the plans you've got there were already in place in situ to deliver 1140 hours. All we're saying on top of that is that within the system overall, we've accommodated an extra 100 children that would ordinarily have went into P1 at this point in time.
It would be useful if you could share the actual costs of what this deferred places pilot is with us. Clearly, you're having to do the figures for government as well.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, Councillor Munro.
And on the issue of nurseries, I should add that I feel that if you call it Boriston, people would still call it King Glass because of that's where it is. So it seems to me a bit pointless changing it to something when it has a health centre that's known as King Glass, and it's in that general area. And Boriston's a bit of a mouthful for a 5-year-old.
The feedback I've had, Councillor Munro, is that the parents wanted to separately distinguish that from the medical centre that was there and to call it something different. That's the local feedback that I've had on that. So effectively, we've asked the parents, and that's the name they want, and that's what we've always tried to do in terms of all the projects anyway. But thank you for providing that information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Alexander, and I've got Councillor Bissett. Councillor Alexander, you're on mute.
Chair, I'm sorry if there's a question asked there. I couldn't hear anything. Sorry.
I think Councillor Alexander's having a bit of difficulty getting off mute. David, I'll maybe go to Councillor Bissett and I'll come back to you. I can't, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Bissett and then I'll come back to Councillor Alexander.
Thanks, Convener. I'll be brief. I'd just like to welcome Isla, Charlotte and Cameron to the executive, and hope they enjoy the experience and maybe have a thought and questions for the next time round. And I'd just like to echo what's been said already, and hopefully Gary can pass back thanks to the team for all the significant effort. I know how difficult it's been with coronavirus and all the other issues that's been raised, and I think these early learning centres are excellent, and look forward to seeing the improvement in education of our children, or our wee people, as we say, for their personal development. After all, they're the future, and hopefully it'll help families as well. You know, perhaps the mums and dads get back to work, or provide a wee bit of relief for them. So, but overall, I think everybody in the council has been behind this project, and as I say, I'd like to thank Gary for we're nearly there, and thanks, if you could take the thanks back to the team. I just wanted to ask around 4.4. First of all, I'm glad to see that the revenue is going to be mainstreamed at some point. That was always a concern. 4.4, Scottish Milk and Healthy Snacks Scheme, the 179,000, is that going to be ongoing? We'll get it next year, or is it a one-off? How does this particular one work? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bissett. Again, a very pertinent and good question, Councillor Bissett. Short answer to it is £179,000 is ring fenced for 1 year only. And it's only ring fenced for 1 year only because the government don't know the uptake and the overall cost of the scheme. But the government have agreed that once they work that out, that money will be made to all authorities effectively to be cost neutral. So yes, the money will be ongoing. At this point in time, I don't know if it'll be ongoing on a ring fence basis or if it'll be mainstream, but certainly one thing they have guaranteed is that whatever we pay out, we will get back. So there's cost neutrality to the council. But as soon as I hear anything about if it's going to be ring fenced or mainstreamed, I will update the executive in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alexander, are you with us to? Okay. Yeah. I think Councillor Alexander's having a few technical difficulties, but I've got Maureen, you wanted to come in.
Yes, and I had some technical difficulties earlier, so apologies for being late for the meeting. It was just to say that, you know, I think the goal in all of this was to get the buildings ready and make sure that everything ran smoothly, but there have been unprecedented obstacles put in everybody's path here. But as an ex-teacher, I would like to commend the care groups work that's still carried on. They've identified 15 children who needed extra support, and that support has been given to those children and their families, so it's great that that's been carried on in the background. I'm very happy about that. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, is there anyone else who? Okay, David, you're off mute now. Do you want to say something?
Yes, thanks very much for your patience. I don't know what's wrong with this laptop, but it's about to turn into a frisbee if it doesn't get its act together. In terms of every night we see the news and we see industry after industry and commerce, it's held back because of Brexit. So, I mean, for Nigel to declare that is actually true, because this problem didn't exist prior to Brexit. But hey, that's perhaps for another day. I think what was important, particularly this committee, is that we are kept to what we laid out.
David, you're cutting out.
The,
You're cutting out again. Can you maybe put your video off again and see if we can improve the sound quality?
the video's off at this end.
No, it's just you're cutting out a wee bit, making it very disjointed. We're not
Okay.
necessarily catching everything you're
The
saying.
point I was making was that I think has been made. Hopefully, it was caught, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, thanks,
Okay,
Convener.
thank you. Thanks, David. Mr. Naylor wanted to come in. Robert.
Thanks, Convener. It's just on the point of the deferred places scheme, and just so that there isn't any misunderstanding around this. It's not that children are getting an extra year. It's addressing a long-standing issue where children, depending on their date of birth, may have had only 4 terms of nursery provision. And what this will mean is that instead of having 4, some children will now have 7 terms rather than 6 terms of nursery provision. And it's well known that children who start school at age 4.5 tend overall to do less well than children who start school when they're 5. And this programme that's been brought forward by the Scottish Government actually follows practice in Falkirk for some time, whereby it was more possible here for parents to have a deferred place than it was in certain other councils. And the final point I would make is, in terms of the additional cost, there are 100 fewer pupils in primary 1, which means that there's effectively a saving in the primary school costs, whilst there's greater expenditure in the early years sector. And we expect that we will arrive at a steady state over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, where this just becomes the norm. I just thought it was maybe helpful to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I think it was indeed helpful. I'll turn to Councillor McHugh if she's got any final words that she wants to say in relation to this item before we move on.
Thanks, convener, and thanks everyone for the questions. I can see the report as I read it. It seems straightforward to me, but obviously, you know, there's different questions that arise while other members read it. And thanks, Robert, for clarifying that about the deferred year. I welcome that, because, as you know, I've worked in that area, and there has been children that will definitely benefit from an extra year at nursery. I also want to say, with regards to Maureen's comments, yep, I totally appreciate the new team. As anyone in early years will know, well, early years staff have always been very good at identifying issues, and they've always kind of tried to pull out the stops to get as much services to a young person before they hit primary school, where it can be more difficult to get services in. So if we can iron things out and get the support in there to families before they hit primary school, then it's advantageous to everyone involved. But now that we've got this team that are focusing more so than ever on supporting our children and families that need that extra bit of support, that's fantastic. So, yep, amongst all the other hurdles that's been going on, we've kept our focus on our children, and we've put in extra staff, we've built up staff teams, we're looking at putting extra seniors in now, which is all fantastic work. So it's not just a fantastic building with brilliant facilities, it's also building up an expertise in staff right across children's services. So thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Are we all agreed on the paper?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to item 7, which is the Connected Falkirk update. And is it David, are you going to take this one? Yeah.
Yes, convener, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everyone. So this report seeks to provide an update on the Connected Falkirk programme, which is part of the Succeed Today, Excel Tomorrow programme of activity. It's an ambitious programme seeking to roll out 22,000 devices to children and young people across Falkirk Council and 2,500 members of staff. The background is detailed in section 3. Section 4 provides an update on the provision so far. So section 4.1, we have been deploying over 1,000 Apple TVs across all of our educational establishments over recent months. They'll provide wireless connectivity to devices in the class to allow the class to display their work, and also able to share lesson delivery and also share the work of the young people during the time of their class. Section 4.2 provides an update on the device deployment. The Sprint team have been working extremely hard with every single young person to build their own device to ensure that when they leave the build session that their device is fully functional and operational, ready for use in the class the next day. However, there obviously is some impact to the device rollout as a result of COVID through a number of factors. One is in relation to the availability of the hardware. The second was obviously the impact that the SQA examination situation had from Easter to June, and delaying the rollout to some of our secondary schools during that time. And also further complicating, we had a 3-week outage of the device management system Lightspeed which then further delayed colleagues' ability to roll out these devices to schools. However, despite all of these delays compounding the situation, the anticipated deadline of the end of August has only had to be moved now to the end of November due to the hard work of the team. Section 4.3 highlights the importance of the connectivity, because obviously the devices on their own provide a degree of support. However, once they become part of a wider network, that's where we get the real benefit. And currently 56 of our 58 establishments are now using the full ability of the updated Wi-Fi connectivity. The remaining 2 schools, Cumley Park and Drumbowie, have all their internal networking completed, and we're just awaiting the Virgin Media external connection. This is to be anticipated to be completed by the end of this month. Section 4.4 gives an update on the career-long professional development, and again linked to the work that we're doing with our young people to up their skills. We also have a comprehensive package of support to all of our in-school staff to ensure that they can maximise the benefit of the new technology. And the Sprint team have been engaging both at the deployment stage of the devices, but providing further sessions to each school and establishment, as well as a comprehensive package of online materials to support colleagues explore the use of the technology and share between one another how we can best maximise the impact on learning. Section 6 gives an update on the financial position, and to date £7.9 million of agreed funding has been spent on devices, implementation, connectivity and Wi-Fi. Section 6.3 acknowledges the fact that the impact of this programme will be assessed over the coming 4 years, and if proven to deliver the anticipated benefits, a further bid may be received. However, it also notes the fact that the Scottish Government have agreed that within the lifetime of this Parliament, they will be deploying 700,000 devices across all children and young people in Scotland. That will obviously have significant beneficial impact to the Falkirk's capital position, and further information and reports will be brought to the Executive in due course. So finally, really, despite all of the challenges that have occurred over the last number of months, the team have worked tirelessly to ensure that the rollout has progressed at pace, and I'm really pleased to say that we're nearing the end of the rollout of this particular piece of work, and moving to probably the biggest bit now is actually the implementation of the devices in school, and where we're hoping to realise the greatest benefit in the future of the learning experience of our children and young people across Falkirk Council. I'm happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you, David. Another good news story for the authority, and one that I think we can all be proud of. But I'll go to Councillor McHugh, who has much of the credit for pushing this, particularly over the recent times.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks, David, for your whistle-stop report. Thank you. It's actually really under all the immense pressures that we've been in. It's just amazing the work that's been put in and the dedication that's been put in for our staff. You know, to get, and we are one of the forefront in the whole of Scotland, and we are there is jealousy, let's say, out there. Speaking to my colleagues at COSLA, you know, they can't believe how Falkirk, and I've been asked numerous times, how come Falkirk's managed to get so far ahead of the game? So certainly thank you, David, and thanks to everyone involved in that. I'd just like to draw your attention to 3.2. The last part of 3.2, which is our statement. Wait till I find it here. Sorry, folks. It's really just in a nutshell our statement. It's all about our children. It's all about giving the best possible chance to our children to stretch their qualities to the maximum and to strive forward, so every single one of our kids will have the best possible chance in the future. So thanks again. I'll move the report.
Thank you, Adana. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener, and like Councillor McHugh, I think we're all struggling with various forms of the lurgy and whatnot. I think, as Councillor McHugh was saying there, you know, there are so many people who really put Falkirk ahead of the game in bringing forward this initiative, and we should be You know, Adana being one of them, absolutely convener, but I mean, I think as Adana was saying, the staff, and also I think probably speak for most elected members in saying that the children themselves, and when we had our sessions, when the children came and the students to demonstrate how the technology could really impact on their ability to learn, was really you know, insightful, and had probably a big impact on elected members in taking this forward. And I think you know, the last year, although we made these decisions prior, the last year and a half has really shown us how essential the connectivity, you know, not just the devices, but the connectivity and the whole ethos has been. I've had my two children at home for the last couple of weeks again, and you know, seeing as well that adaptability and the way that things are able to be very different from, you know, in the period of learning that we've now had and become used to. It's just really remarkable. I think the children deserve a real vote of thanks for showing us that actually these systems could work, and that they're not just, it's not just a tokenistic, let's give everybody a device type thing. This is really about connected Falkirk and connecting our education together. So I'd certainly echo the words of Councillor McHugh in terms of the efforts the staff have gone to, how far ahead we are in terms of other local authorities. And again, similar to the last report, where we're talking about the early years and the difficulties that not just Brexit, but worldwide shortages, the semiconductor shortages, the difficulty that's placed on supply everywhere. The fact that we got that in early has been of huge benefit to our students, and the staff have had to work very hard to do that. It can't be underestimated how difficult that challenge has been. So you know, emphasise that to our thanks to the staff. But my own youngest is very much looking forward to getting her device next week at Larbert High, and perhaps when she gave me the comment about when she was getting it, she was much less diplomatic than I'll be. But anyway, she's very much looking forward to it and feels that it's about time herself. Even though I've emphasised the hard work that everybody has put in to get it, so she'll be happy to have that now. So thanks very much to the staff.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murtagh. I'll open it up, and I've got John Chalmers. John, you want to come in?
Hi there. Just to say that I realise the Connected Falkirk team have been working really hard, and it's really appreciative. And I know it's been things out with their control. However, I think it is really becoming a wee bit frustrating for some of the teachers who have obviously been waiting on their devices, and they've been told it's this, and then it's going on and on. So hopefully by December, we'll all have the devices in our hand and we'll be able to use them for the teaching purposes. But it was just a frustration that is obviously coming from some of the teaching colleagues, as well as some of the older kids in my primary school, because we keep saying they're coming. They don't always understand what's going on in the whole world as far as semiconductors and things not being available. But it's just to say that I do realise they're working really hard, and I hope they keep up the good work to continue it. But it's just that wee bit of frustration that some of the colleagues are just wanting to get on and to push this forward. So just to say to members, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Munro.
Convener, I think we all understand that education is one of the single most important elements of our lives, and as children in Africa often demonstrate, they feel that the way out of poverty is to have an education. In this country, we're very fortunate in that everybody has the opportunity of an education. This report is clearly a work in progress. My concerns, and after all, we have to point out what we feel are the bits that are missing, are that it doesn't mention the financials in any way. And this is another Council of the Future project in education. And under 6.3 and 6.4, it talks about I think under 6.4 it says the successful rollout of this ambitious and transformational project will allow children's services to consider new and alternative methods and improve platforms. So it sort of implies that we're not doing that, and since the funding of this was twofold, to actually give children the option of having devices, but it was also to actually find new and more cost-effective ways of doing things within schools. And we don't get any information on what those new and effective methods are, and very little about the financial benefits of the overall programme. Perhaps David can enlighten me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Munro. In relation to the work in terms of how these platforms will be used in future, they're linked to other aspects of the Succeed Today, Excel Tomorrow project, and one of those is the Falkirk's Professional and Technical Academy work, which we're beginning to kick off now that the devices are now in the hands of our young people, and I'm working now to work up that particular piece of work and project, and that will be reported to members in due course. I take your point about the financials, and I'll take that off table and speak to Gary about how we can maybe better capture that for members and provide a further update report in due course.
And just to say that that there is also the reports that go into the executive that will have the update in relation to the budget allocations, both capital and revenue, which is one of the key areas within that. So that there is information provided elsewhere out with this committee on the progress and the spend on that. Okay, I haven't seen any other hands. Oh, Councillor Kerr, sorry.
Convener, just a quick question for David. Leading on for John Chalmers, how many? I don't know if you mentioned in the report. How many devices have we still to give out?
Councillor Kerr, I don't have the specific figures, but I can find those figures for you from Stuart Lennon, who's the project manager. Obviously, that's changing on a day-to-day basis as they continue to roll out the devices, but I'm more than happy to provide that information to you.
Okay, David. A supplementary question to that then. Have we got devices that's ready to be distributed, or are we waiting on devices coming in?
No, a good question, Councillor. Stuart's informed me now that almost all the devices we require now are sitting, awaiting distribution. So the limiting factor now is the team's ability to actually get into schools and deploy the devices. We're no longer waiting for the devices. So that's at least one aspect ticked off. And as I said, the challenges we had with the device management system, that was just a further challenge in terms of preventing the actual rollout of the devices. But those two things have now been overcome, and we're in a much stronger position. But now just down to the physical challenges of actually now getting the devices out to school and making sure that both the children and the staff are adequately trained and informed when they receive their devices. And that work is what's happening between now and November.
Thank you, David. And just echo the sentiments of my colleagues that allowing young children and young adults to have these devices where some might have not been able to afford them has given them an opportunity to be in the same playing level as everybody else, and the council and yourself and everybody involved can only be commended for that. So thank you very much, David. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you, James. If there is no other comments, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Item 8 is Falkirk Community Learning and Development Annual Update on the CLD Action Plan and the Falkirk's Draft CLD Plan for 21 to 24.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through this one.
Yeah.
And Mark Meakin will come in at the end, Chair, to give an overview of the appendices insofar as the operational part of the paper. The report, there's two aims, and just to remind members that this is twofold. Is to provide members with an update on year 3 of the current 3-year action plan, and to put forward to members a proposed new 3-year action plan. The annual update covers 2021, and the new 3-year draft plan covers 21 through to 24. There are 4 recommendations for the exec to consider today. They're outlined in section 2.1. Section 3 covers a number of things. Looks at outlines the regulations and guidance that apply. It looks at the 2 obligations that are placed on councils, and it shows the timelines where there's been changes made over the last couple of years to the updated guidance. The section 3.5 summarises the expectations placed on Falkirk Council, and there's 7 bullet points that show the expectations. Later, members will see when Mark talks through it that the emphasis is very much on COVID recovery, as one would expect, and there's a strong emphasis on the recommencement of youth work across the Falkirk area. In terms of section 4, section 4.1, it summarises the current background and emanation of the current 3-year plan. It looks at the 6 priority areas outlined in the Falkirk plan, and those are shown in the second bullet point of 4.1. I would say that in terms of this whole plan, the new 3-year plan, there's 57 partners being involved in the co-creation of this plan. So anybody that's looking for an example of good practice throughout the area, 57 partners being involved in the co-creation and collegiate working to set up a plan is certainly a testimony to the hard work that's been put in across the whole partnership network. The second part of 4.1 assesses, as we mentioned earlier on, the focus really over the last year or so has been on, as you would expect, COVID response, COVID recovery. 4.2 outlines 8 examples of where support was given over the last year or so to help support Falkirk area from its COVID recovery. And there are a number of very good examples given in those bullets that we've alluded to this executive over the last year or so. In section 4.3, it looks at the current 3-year plan, which members may recall it contained 15 priority action areas. I'm very pleased to report that progress has been made against each of those priority action areas. However, again, as members may recall, 2 years ago, when we took a very, very detailed plan, members said, next time, could you trim it down a bit and be a bit more streamlined, a bit more focused. Last year, the report was well received, and this year, we've also done the same. So in terms of the appendix that looks at that, we've highlighted 7 priority areas, and we've highlighted those priority areas under 3 themes: improving health and well-being, increasing community engagement, and improving core skills and employability. Turning now to the new 3-year draft plan in section 4.4. I mentioned earlier on, example of co-creation with 57 partners. Appendix 5 gives details of those 57 partners. 4.5 outlines the critical alignment to our strategic links. And members may recall that the last Education Scotland inspection of the CLD service back in 2008 highlighted the importance and critical need for the use of data. So data is to the front and the foreground of what we've done here. Our plan has been aligned with the lessons we've learned from the Education Scotland inspection back in 2018. In 4.6, the plan itself covers 2 areas: the plan itself and also the delivery plan. And those are outlined in Appendix 2. Turning now to 4.8, I'm very pleased to report that a number of the networks within the partnership have already agreed to review progress against the new plan over the coming months and years ahead. And again, can't emphasise enough the strong emphasis of the use of data here, and the outcome assessments are going to be critical to that. And again, that's looking back at the Education Scotland inspection report and recommendations from before. So in conclusion, this action plan is a tremendous example of a collegiate and partnership working. Strong focus has been made on COVID recovery and been mentioned at this executive over the last year or so, and it continues to be the focus on the new action plan as well. The new action plan also dwells on the lessons we've learned from the Education Scotland inspection, and the use of data and management information is now firmly embedded to support more informed and better management prioritisation of resources and decision making going forward. I'm going to hand you across to Mark Meakin now, who will talk you briefly through some of the key points from the appendices. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gary. As Gary says, I'll take you through the appendices. So we'll start at Appendix 1, and that gives you the annual update for the final year of the 2018-2021 CLD action plan, and it identifies a number of key priority actions, and it gives examples of some of the work that was undertaken around each priority action. And if you start on the first one, which is priority action 2, this one relates to a new initiative that we're actually building in, which is really about enabling community organisations to look at their own inequalities that they're facing, but also to reach into a lot of the communities they're engaging with and a lot of the individuals they're engaging with, so that they can get a much richer perspective on that. And it's about communities doing research so that that informs community planning going forward and co-designing services to enable this to happen. And that's the PEN group, who is a group of people who have learning disabilities wanting to look at the health inequalities around learning disabilities for themselves. And they're developing a health issue in the community project to do that. There's a wee statement from some of the groups there that enables you to see some of the impact that it's having. And the next one is Falkirk's RVS service, which it details provided 750 hours as a result of work that was in June 2021 this year, and it talks about some of the work that happened during that month. Now, they've been very much focused on reducing social isolation with a number of people that they're engaging with, so that they can get companionship visits, phone calls, etc., and garden gates visit to try and reduce the isolation that they're feeling. And critically, they've been involved in the delivery of food and medication supplies to those individuals, and that gives you some examples of the work that they've done there. And there's particular statements from volunteers as well as others around about that work. Priority Action 18, which looks at how we can co-design, co-produce and co-deliver services. You know, we've got partners working with a group of young people who have highlighted through the lockdown lowdown surveys. You'll remember that there was 3 of them done earlier this year, as well as CLD's own survey for young people, and identified mental health and employability as being a specific issue that young people felt as though they would like to see addressed. As part of that approach, we've got a group of young people, I think there's 8 young people working with partners just now to look at a research project where they become co-researchers, rather than it being them being treated as subjects. They're actually researching and reaching into their communities to get responses back from other young people as well about the issues around mental health and access and employability services. So they're working on that right as we speak. There's also a project detailed there which was part of the Get Into Falkirk, so which are Get Into Summer, where 9 young people were involved in developing their own history project, which is quite fascinating. And a lot of other young people have participated within that project as well. And it takes you on like a treasure hunt around about Falkirk, but it's very much about engaging within local communities in the Falkirk area. And that's promoted through Young Scot Falkirk website as well. Priority 15 looks at food skills of vulnerable people and increasing access to food opportunities within their communities, and it details the community pantries. There's 11 now open community pantries across the council area. I have to say, it's a bit of a dichotomy, this one. It's not something that we should be proud of in terms of having food pantries, but it's something that is a response, particularly to COVID, that we need to do, and that to address food insecurity. So that's detailed there. Employ core skills and employability. That details some work that we've done with Link Living around about Steps to Resilience project that they've been delivering over the last year, and they've worked with they've delivered 8 courses working with over 85 young people in that, and that's pretty good because it was all online and the young folk bought into it really well. Priority 5 talks about CLD interventions about the poverty-related attainment gap. Sorry, Councillor Alexander.
think he was unmute, but he's muted. It's okay.
Okay,
Sorry,
that's okay.
Mark, carry on.
Okay, I'll just carry on. Work around family learning project within Graham High School cluster, and that Connect project there had quite a fantastic impact with the parents and the pupils involved, and also the CLD partnership up at Braes High School. Some of you may have picked up last week that it was reported in the Daily Record and got national recognition of the type of work that was being undertaken within there, and marvellous outcomes there that were delivered. Then you've got digital inclusion, which is priority action 9, and literacies. And it gives us example of the type of packages and connectivity through the Connecting Scotland project, and that was really well received. There's other bits of work that aren't detailed within that plan that members may be specifically interested in terms of CLD partners, one of them being Youth Scotland, which is the national youth organisation, has grant funded 5 organisations in the last year to deliver youth work, digital youth work, and remove barriers to participation. That was in Grangemouth, West Quarter, Camshore, Langley's, Larbour and Bowness, and that was to enable young people to get involved in STEM activities and arts and crafts, and also physical and environmental awareness learning, and that provided staff and young people with tablets and offer of digital data bundles to young people as well. There was other youth groups involved in that project and ran similar projects as well, and that was up in Sloman and Bonnybridge, and there were small grants that were given during the winter period so that disadvantaged people could access winter clothing and food, and that was grant funded. £5,000 came in from Youth Scotland to do that. As we reported in the last report, which didn't seem too long ago, we received £45,000 for a creative arts project that was delivered at Braes High School, St Mungo's High School and Denny High and Carn Grange, Bowness Academy, and also the Sensory Centre, and that's just going to be coming to an end in the next 2 or 3 weeks when the young people do an online exhibition to do that. Staff, as you know, in youth clubs were closed over the period of the lockdown, so we deployed staff to detach youth work so that they can engage with young people as well, and this was an opportunity to try and provide diversionary activities that would reduce antisocial behaviour in some areas of the council area as well. Cashback for communities grants, the young people applied for that and did a variety of project, and that included a project in Langley's around graffiti art, and that went down really, really well, and it was very much about young people looking at diversionary activities and looking at ways that they can improve their own mental health and well-being. We've established a project working with the Family Nurse Partnership that is around about Falkirk Young Parents Project. So there's 32 young people signed up to that project and participating on a weekly basis, and 10 of those young people are now signed up to do the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which I think is a great thing for them to do, and that's what they've decided that they would like to do. We've also been working very closely, as has partners, with LGBT youth to look at the bronze standard and receiving that and getting the award for the service on that one as well, and delivering a variety of activities that is around about Purple Friday, LGBT History Month and Pride picnics and all that sort of stuff. So there's fantastic work going on there. In terms of work with Young Scot to bring things on digitally and digital communication and digital youth work, we've worked really closely with them, and we've developed the Young Scot Falkirk website, which is quite a different way of delivering services with young people as well. So there's been extensive work going on across the council area in terms of working with young people. Appendix 2 takes you on to the delivery plan for the new draft plan, which is 2021 and 2024. The difference, I suppose, with this plan compared to the last one is the way it now fully integrates with the Falkirk plan, and it looks at the CLD actions that are arising from the implementation of the Falkirk plan. And you can see in the grid system that we've got there, it begins to take that approach and looks at what needs to actually change and what actions need to be taken. And it also allocates the responsibility for doing that. And as Gary's previously said, you've got the Falkirk Communities team, network, you've got the Falkirk Youth Network, you've got the Falkirk Adult Learning Network, you've got the Falkirk CLD Workforce Network and Communities one. And each of them will report back on the actions that have been undertaken and what's been achieved. And I suppose what's been achieved is going to be quite interesting, because we're taking a slightly different approach where we're looking at the collective impact and measuring the collective impact of the work. And that will involve not just statutory CLD partners, but it will also involve communities identifying what transformations has taken place in their communities, which is going to be critical and vital going forward, so that people, local people and community groups themselves can feel and visually see what the difference has been as part of the actions that have been undertaken. And it's been quite interesting in writing the plan that I have had a reference group. I've worked with a reference group to pull the plan together, and that's involved 6 or 7 community representatives meeting with me on an individual basis or a collective basis, where I've been speaking to them about what they see as being the areas and the sections that are contained within the plan that's detailed here. And I've been drafting up text and sending it back to them. They've been feeding back on that text. And a lot of the time, to be honest with you, I've picked up wrongly what they've said, or I'm using too many what they call professional words, and I could have write it in a different way. And I've tried my best to write it in a much more easier way for everybody to understand. So that's going to be maintained. We'll keep that going on as we review the plan. Appendix 3 gives you an overview of the governance arrangements for the plan and the way it reports onto the Community Planning Board, and how for the first time in Falkirk we're actually establishing that Falkirk's Community Learning Partnership as well, and the 4 network groups, and how that feeds up into it, and also feeds up into the empowered communities and enabled communities part of that within that. Appendix 3 looks at the strategic and local plans and the linkages to those for the Falkirk CLD plan, and it provides internet links to that. And as Gary said, in Appendix 5, it gives you a list of a lot of the organisations who have been involved and very actively involved in providing comments back through the surveys or through formal consultation routes with ourselves, or also informal discussions with staff as well. That's me first, convener, in terms of providing that overview. And if people have any questions, I'll hand it back to Gary just now.
Okay. Here, can I just say that in terms of feedback already, we've had really positive feedback from Youth Scotland and also from Education Scotland. I'll give you a couple of comments. It says that it's well written at a high strategic level, very comprehensive, and links very well to the wider outcomes of your LOIP. So two lots of positive feedback from the draft plan that was already circulated from our partnership members. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. Just to say, Councillor Alexander, I think you're inadvertently sharing your screen, so that we've not seen anything. It's just a blank screen, but I think you've maybe pressed the wrong button. If you could perhaps unshare, and that lets me see everybody. While we sort that out, I'll just say thanks very much to both Gary and to Mark. Mark, I'm glad that was the overview, because there was an awful lot in that. But yeah, I think it was helpful to do that. But I'll go to Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Gary, and thanks, Mark. Yep, very, very ambitious plan with lots of detail that I totally appreciate. Can I just say before I go on that I feel CLD is one of the most crucial services in our communities, bringing advice to community groups and to individuals right in the heart of our communities, and they have been, second to none as far as I believe in support over this last year. I think in some ways it's actually this last couple of years and the pressures that we've been under has relit the fire in this service in some areas, but I can also say it's stoked that fire in other areas, because there's always been excellent work going on within CLD, and I appreciate the Appendix 1. It highlights the amount of work and the inventiveness, I suppose you could say, of some of our staff within that, because as services were closing down due to the restrictions, we're having to reinvent ourselves all the time and how we could reach out to the community at a time when people were being told to stay in and to stay away. So I really appreciate the amount of work. I mean, you can see for the report the amount of work that's went on, and that staff have really pulled everything out the bag. And as far as engaging with all the community groups, with all our volunteers, and it's actually encouraged a whole load more community groups and a whole load more volunteers that probably would never have thought about it before. I mean, if we want to take any positives away from what we've been under, that is definitely one of the great positives. And I believe the plan going forward is yet again even more ambitious, taking a different route, but engaging with every partner as we move forward with our communities. So thanks, Mark, and please thank your staff on our behalf. And thanks, Gary. I'll move the support.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I would absolutely echo what Councillor McHugh was saying there, and I think, you know, there's going to be so many things where, you know, we know the challenges that have come out of the pandemic and the, you know, the tragedy that is befallen the whole world. But I think there will be some positive things, and that certainly, you know, we used to talk a lot about the problem of silo working, and the problem within councils of, you know, departmentalisation and not understanding. And as Mark was saying, I think the CLD and the journey that and the change that CLD have you know, have embarked upon and had to, you know, be thrown into over the last 18 months has been nothing short of remarkable. Probably when I first joined the council, probably thought more about CLD with respect to buildings, you know, attached in my mind there would be a sense that there was, you know, community learning development centres, and that services were somehow, you know, attached with centres and things that were happening with that. And I think over the last 18 months, although that wasn't necessarily an accurate view, that has completely gone. You know, it's all about what the service has been doing within the communities. I think that the detail within the report about co-production and about co-authoring and co-production, understanding what the communities want, you know, that has, you know, these things are not in the report as buzzwords or you know, phrases that are there to tick boxes. Over the last 18 months, we've really seen firsthand how a really hard situation, and don't get me wrong, you know, having been involved in the early days of delivery of aid during the pandemic, and how quickly things had to change, and the difficulties and the mistakes that had to be learned and adapted to. You know, I think that the staff and the leadership within CLD deserve a lot of praise from that. And I think that one thing, as was saying, that the Falkirk plan, which now, you know, we've got out to consultation, the way that that's been conducted, the way that housing and communities, and, you know, we're here in the education committee, education of young people, but the way that education, housing and communities, how that's all interlinked, has been a real, almost, you know, revolutionary change from the way that I've seen it as a councillor, how things have changed, and how, you know, engaged our staff are, and how the community's needs are really being co-designed and co-produced. So I similarly echo Councillor Maple-Jones. You know, that's quite a run through, Mark and Gary, in terms of, you know, the brevity of it. It shows how much detail is actually going on, how much work's actually going on. But I think it's certainly something, although we'll continue to learn and improve from our communities, really fantastic, you know, work and ethos behind the report, not just the detail that's in it. And I'd absolutely, you know, be happy to second the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murtagh. I will open it up for questions or comments. I've got Maureen, then I've got Michael. Maureen.
Thanks, convener. When I was reading some of this, I was so distressed by all the different problems and issues that people had. But the 6 priority areas that were stated, you know, it's not just about supporting these people, it's about empowering them as well. And mental health is one of my big things, that, you know, people in the city neighbourhoods and that should be doing a lot more. And it's even a small input can have a huge impact on the person. The bit that I really wanted to look at was about the history project, and this was about mental health and employability project. They went walking and they discovered treasure, and they were involved in lots of other aspects of that. that initiative. I like the fact that the walks were all over Falkirk, so a lot of people could walk to the designated area to take part. And then the statement, I like the impact statements because it showed you the impact it had on the people that were being supported. And this statement just summed it up for me. It said, the impact of taking part in the Hidden Treasures project has helped me to gain more friends, more research skills, and discovering different places to walk that I didn't know were there. It's also helped me to open up about myself more and helped me realise that not everyone will judge me on what happened in my past. And I just thought that just summed everything up. The amount of CLD partners that you've got, Mark, I don't know how you manage that. I mean, it's a huge amount. 57 partners that are helping out with this initiative. It's just fantastic. Fantastic, Falkirk. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Maureen, and these comments are very, very welcome, I think, and I'm sure Mark will take those back to his staff. Michael.
No questions here, just a commend the report and just to say thank you very much to everyone who's been involved for the tremendous amount of hard work that's gone into this, for the great work that's ongoing, and for the very comprehensive way in which you've shared all these things today. So just a big thank you for all that you're doing for the community and for an excellent report. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. James.
Thanks, convener. And thanks to Mark and the team for the report. Regarding 4.1, the Falkirk Plan 6 priorities, these are massive, massive areas, convener. And the Appendix 2, which covers each area, only scratches the surface. Is there any plans to bring one at a time to future education and young people's executive?
I'll hand that to Mark, but you have to take into account that last time we did ask for things to be simplified and streamlined as well, so that I think that was taken into account on this occasion. But Mark, what has the plans around perhaps bringing the monitoring back, or is that to be done through the Falkirk plan?
I mean, it's a bit of both really. It'll be done through the Falkirk plan, and what's detailed here is the actual unique contribution that CLD will make to the Falkirk plan. And I'm having discussions with Jen Kerr around about how we can utilise the website to actually make very transparent the impact that the work's having on that. But when we bring back the committee report, it might be much more streamlined, but it'll have links back to the website so you can see the overview of the actual work that's been undertaken in that year. As you're aware, we had to report on an annual basis back to this committee, and I think we'll continue to do that. But regularly we'll update the new community planning website to reflect the progress that's been made, and elected members and members here can actually see that, and we'll direct you to that in members briefings. So we'll give you regular members briefings directing you to that website.
That's great, convener. Just that I understand, and I was one that asked for them to be streamlined, but getting the links to the different parts is really, really handy. So I didn't want a full page or a full book, but when you get the links to it and you can go and read it at your own leisure, that's much appreciated. So thanks, Mark. Thanks, convener.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. I've got Councillor Black, then Councillor Nimmo, then Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. It's an excellent report, and I think we're all very appreciative of what CLD staff and the community groups have done over the last 18 months. It's been really extraordinary. Now going forward, I think that we need to think a wee bit more about scrutiny. We have to concentrate quite rightly on meeting the need, but I think we really need to make sure that we're not we didn't meet that need very well, but I think going forward we need to make sure that it's definitely a need that's been met, and there were no creating dependency. So I think that monitoring systems being put in place is really important when you're dealing with public money. I mean, from working in scrutiny, I know that can be difficult for officers to be objective when they're working so closely with groups, but I just think that it's really, really important. And just one other thing, I know that there was a decision made, I think it was at the budget, about lets for community halls, etc. And I know that Christians Against Poverty are doing work just now, and obviously with post-pandemic, there's a lot of issues for people more than before with regards to debt and with regards to loss of jobs, etc. So I just think for groups that are actually dealing with stuff that's related to COVID, is there any way that the lets that maybe could be waived just now, just till things get back to normal, if they ever get back to normal?
I think
Gary,
that's
do you
one
want
that
to answer
maybe
that one, or do you want me to answer it, Gary?
Just to say that, Chair, that the points made there are good. The monitoring will be taking place on an ongoing basis as we go through the next iteration of the plans. You're absolutely right that the last year has been one of really dealing with the COVID position. We've never really had a chance to sit back and look back and see how things could it be monitored better, and lessons learned. So I think that's something that we'll take on board to look at with our partners to see how we do it on an ongoing basis. The second question about the lets is probably a challenging one, and certainly the decision was taken by the council back in February as part of the budget with the lets charges that we've got. And I think what we'll do is Mark and I will take that off table and have a look at what we can do and see if there's any way that we could potentially utilise some of the COVID funds to help support the groups that do need access to facilities. So if you bear with us, we'll have a look at that separately and see if we can do anything to support them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, convener. Just a quick point. And again, thanks, Gary and Mark, for what is a very detailed report. It's appreciated. Gary, I think you alluded to the fact that the CLD plan for 2021 to 2024 was subject to regular review and updating. And I think that's probably only right. When you take into account the fact that Falkirk Council is basically going through a major restructuring exercise with the trust coming back in-house, and there's already some talk of significant parts of CLD moving to corporate and neighbourhood under housing. There could well be future implications for the CLD plan, so it's only right that this is going to be reviewed on a regular basis. But I'd maybe be happy to take any comments you have in relation to that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nimmo. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Nimmo. The Council's taken a decision to review CLD. All I can say to that is senior officers are looking at that just now. We're very much at the analysis and information gathering stage, and we're not in a position to make any decisions or put any recommendations forward for decision on it yet. But once that work has been completed, then I'm sure there'll be a report that will come to one of the Council Executive Committees to seek agreement on how we take that part of the work forward.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, convener.
Thank you, and finally, Councillor Bissett.
I'll just be brief. I'd just like to thank Gary and Mark for this excellent report, and it's a good plan, and I'm glad to see it aligns with the community planning partnerships key themes. I think it's time we had that joined up thinking, and we do seem to be getting there. We've heard comments of it's a unique contribution that CLD make, and it's ambitious and all of the rest of it, and certainly CLD are a great interface with communities. It just disappoints me that every year it comes up as a cut, and I'm hoping that it's such a quality service and it's being developed year on year that hopefully it'll not come forward as a cut. But given the difficulty we face in the budget, it may well do. but I sincerely hope it doesn't. And I think it's a great service, and it's, at this point in time, it's certainly a service that we really need and the communities need. I'd just like to thank Mark and everyone else for the effort they put in. I certainly know the locality planning that's going on is being received very well, and hopefully local councillors can be involved in that locality planning at some point. So that's the only observations I would make, and just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bissett. I think one of the key areas within the feedback that we've got is the sharing of the lived experience by those that have actually been involved with CLD, particularly over the last sort of 18-19 months. And the credits to them are speak for themselves, and often it's a service that's perhaps not given the priority that it should have because of the work that they do, particularly with our communities. And as empowering our communities is a key strand of engagement with our communities, is something that we have sought to turn around, to engage differently and allow to be led by our communities. I think that CLD are going to have a key role in the future in doing all of that, and I do believe that the closer relationship with the communities team will be able to have that effect of helping break down some of the silos, and do that more collective working and the co-production with our communities that's needed, and that in itself should drive our financial priorities as a council going forward. So I'll add my thanks to the team, and indeed the work that they have done, particularly over the pandemic, but look forward to working with them in the future as we look to develop things further. I'll just go to Councillor McHugh if there's any final comments that you want to make, Adana.
Just to, I'm having a problem with my microphone. Also, my wee face is spinning, so just to extend my thanks and moving on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We're happy to agree the report.
Great.
Thank you. Move on to item 9, which is the SQA National Qualifications Attainment in Falkirk Secondary Schools. And David, are you taking this one? Yep.
I am. Thank you very much, convener. Yep. So this is the annual update report from the traditional September update on the performance of our children and young people over the recent SQA certification. Again, I've been very careful not to use exams because, again, for the second year, we haven't had exams for our senior pupils. So the purpose of the report is to provide members with an update on the progress, but also to highlight that, as usual, a fuller report will be brought to the committee into the spring, which takes account of all the qualifications that our school leavers undertake and achieve before they leave school. And again, that would then allow us to have benchmark data against the virtual comparator, local authority data and national data. And that report will be tabled in due course. The background, again, this report solely focuses on the national 3, 4 and 5 higher and advanced higher qualifications that are fed into CMIS over the summer period, and it doesn't account for the other qualifications. 3.2 details the range of other qualifications that our young people engage in, and those range from higher national certificates and diplomas, foundation apprenticeships, all the way through to SQA National Progression Awards. So there's quite a significant basket of activity that this report doesn't capture. So again, in 3.5, it details the challenges of this year. And again, for the second year, we've had no formal examinations for our young people to undertake. However, the SQ have indicated to schools already that they are planning for examinations in the coming session, but they've also asked schools to have contingency plans in place should that decision need to change. So instead, this year, I undertook a 5-stage process which detailed in 3.5, and that involved rigorous amounts of conversation and planning at pace with my SQA coordinators, head teachers and senior dental staff to ensure that we had a rigorous process to enable our young people to be recognised for all of the work they had undertaken during the past year. And that information then was submitted to the SQA prior to the summer holidays and resulted in the exams, the certification following thereafter. So section 4 considers the attainment. So section 4.1 looks at the SQ attainment in S4. And again, the data shows a strong set of data. Again, the 5 or more awards at level 3 was 92%, 5 or more at level 4 was 87%, and 5 or more at level 5 was 51%. Obviously a slight variation from the previous year, but again, a significant improvement from the 2019 year. The attainment differential last year is likely to be attributed to the alternative certification model, which was used last year. It was inferred versus this year, which was actually demonstrated attainment. So there was a subtle difference in terms of actually how schools had to gather the data, and we do feel at this stage that accounts for the change in the data from this year. But again, there's further ongoing work going to be undertaken just to further analyse that to get a clearer understanding, particularly with S4 results. 4.2 looks at the attainment in S5, and again, I'm pleased to say that across all measures, there have been strong performance by our young people, showing improvement from last year and over obviously the last 4 years as well. The attainment here, we feel, is attributed to the fact that the approach to examination was tailored to the local authority and schools to design it to meet the individual learners' needs, and therefore they were able to gain the maximum benefit from that. And again, what was different from this year compared to last year, if you remember, the SQA took the data and crunched it through a statistical model. This year, they took the data that we provided them at face value, and with the exception of 1 or 2 administrative errors in terms of addition or incorrect data, there was no changes made by the SQA through any statistical model this year. Section 4.3 looks at the attainment by the end of S6, and again, I'm pleased to report across all measures our young people have performed exceptionally well, and that's at higher and advanced higher. And again, attributed to the similar model, the fact that this blended approach of using the school assessment with teacher judgments in there has allowed our young people to be recognised for the work that they managed to achieve over the previous year. I'd like to take a moment just to actually thank everyone, because obviously the young people have had a tremendously difficult year, and they've worked exceptionally well with their schools and their families to undertake this process, which is foreign to us all, and also to all of my staff who have worked tirelessly to ensure that no young person has been disadvantaged through this process. And again, I'm confident that this will continue for the subsequent years ahead. As ever, we don't take our eye off the ball. My colleagues will be continuing to engage with schools, as will the schools themselves, to look at their own data, to scrutinise that meticulously, to ensure that they then learn from this year's experience to enable their children and young people to benefit from that in the future years ahead. And I'm happy to take any questions from our members. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'll go to Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, Isle, and thanks, David. I'd just like to echo everything that David said there with regard and thanks, and show appreciation for all the hard work that's gone into this yet again very difficult year with no exams, but ensuring that our children are reaching their potential. And as you can see from some of the data in the report, we are and they are meeting their potential. They are still achieving, and we have steadied the ship through this time, and all thanks goes to staff, support staff, and our children and families, definitely. And it's great to see that we're maintaining levels, we're increasing in some areas, and we're moving forward with great credit. I'd like to draw your attention to 4.4, and it's 0.9 and 4.4, where they highlight the dedication that our teachers are taking upon themselves. And through that extra study, through that expertise, our children are getting the best possible chances. And I appreciate that, and I'd like to move this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh, and I think your throat's slowly starting to get worse there. So I appreciate you requiring to be brief. I'm happy to second the report and caveated on the fact that this is a work in progress. This is just one part of the picture, and that the further part will give us a better overview of the full picture and the broader achievements that our young people are making. but this report indicates that we have held our 2019 position where we had the best ever attainment. And considering the disruption over the last couple of years that our young people and families and teaching staff have experienced, that in itself is an achievement and one that they should all be very proud of. And I do look forward to seeing the broader picture and the achievements that are being made there. But I think, as David said, you know, good alone is not good enough, and we need to continue to push those boundaries and raise the aspirations for our young people, so that they do maximise their potential going forward and be all that they can be and all that they would want to be for the future. So I'm really pleased that we have got this statement of position right now, and know that it's good foundations that we can build on, and that there is real enthusiasm within the whole of the education service, and that includes our early learning and everyone involved with the school family, to just do the best for the young people. And a lot of that has been built upon as a result of the pandemic, and something that I think we need to continue to harness going forward. So I'll now open this up for any questions or comments from members. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. What can you say, really? I think Robert and his team have exceeded things, you know, during the pandemic. They had to keep adapting to all the changes and the rules that were coming along. So fair play to them for that. I mean, they adapted, the strategy they adapted the strategy, all the teachers adapted. And it's just commendable what's been achieved here, given the circumstances. So I just want to say a personal tribute to everyone involved, and certainly to the mums and dads as well for the homeschooling that they did. A lot of them did anyway, and their patience in that. So, so just to say a thanks. I know sometimes people maybe feel what they do isn't rewarded as such, but it's certainly really appreciated. I can assure you that. I just wanted to ask about, normally in this report we would see something on positive destinations, but I don't see it in the report this year. It gives you the opportunity to say 95% achieved a positive destination. What is a positive destination, and what happens to the 5% that didn't achieve a positive destination? But I don't see it in the report. I just wonder why it isn't in the report.
Councillor Bissett, that comes in the report that we bring in September, when we get the school leaver destination in December, and we then feed that into the school leaver exit qualification data, and we'll bring that to members. And you're right, it will then give us that clear figure in terms of actually what's actually happening to our young people once they leave school, and obviously their ongoing journey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I've got John Chalmers, then I've got Councillor Munro, Councillor Nimmo and Councillor Kerr. John.
I just wanted to comment on how hard all the teachers in the secondary schools especially worked, which was often like shifting sands, I think, of what the SQA were really wanting. So just wanted to say how hard work the teachers put in, but also the young students who have obviously had a very disrupted 2 years, and to see some of the results, it's obviously been a lot of hard work and a lot of things. So just to reiterate that obviously the teachers have put in a lot of hard work and want to take that forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Convener. Can I just echo what John Chalmers has said in respect to the teachers? I think they've done a fantastic job, not just the teachers, but the support staff as well. David, you alluded to the fact that there's not been any exams for the last 2 years. And I'm just wondering, going by the results here, S5 and S6, there's been big increases in the results there. And having said that, S4, the results are slightly down. Now, I'm just wondering, what is the correct measure here? Is it the exam process or is it the assessment process? Because there's big differences between the two.
That's a very good question, Councillor Nimmo, and it's actually one that's been discussed now at a national level in terms of actually what we have learned over the last 2 years. Compare that to what we have been obviously experiencing for the previous number of years in relation to what is exactly the right way that we should assess our children and young people. There's an OECD report published just over a month ago, which is really just setting out the kind of ground for with the further piece of work that's hopefully going to be reported to just before Christmas, and that will give us some greater clarity in terms of what the professional academic recommendations will be getting fed into Scottish Government and then for further consultation with schools thereafter. But it is the big debate that's happening just now, because obviously there is an argument that school examinations suit certain young people, but equally the process that we've been engaged in the last 2 years suits other young people, and possibly the right way will be a blend of both going forward. But we're obviously working very closely with colleagues across the country to inform that discussion, and as soon as we get further information, I'm happy to report that back to committee.
Thanks for that, David. Thanks, convener.
Thanks, David. I think Mr. Naylor wanted to come in on that one as well. Robert?
Just to add to what David said there, I mean, I think the point about the S4, I think it's important to remember that those are students that have been affected by 2 years of COVID, and they're a cohort that never before had approached anything like an examination, whereas the older children, although disrupted, had some experience of much more formal assessment. So that may be part of the explanation, but as David said, this is something that's been reviewed at a national level just in terms of the apparent uplift in S5 and S6, and our apparent stabilising in terms of the results of S4. And I think it's just worth noting that the two processes were different, not just from the norm, but they were different from last year to this as well. So it is, as David said, very much work in progress and has been looked at on a national basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I've still got a number of speakers and we've still got an item to go, so can I ask for people to be relatively brief in asking their questions rather than have long extended questions, so that we can get through the agenda before we start losing people. So I now go to Councillor Munro.
Thank you, convener. The report seems to indicate that despite the challenges of the last 2 years, children have actually improved overall. But given the circumstances in which children were at home from school for considerable amounts of time and things, and there is a point here, it says schools increasingly identify groups of pupils at risk of not achieving. Clearly there has been a challenge with some groups in school, but looking at this report, it seems to indicate that there isn't at all. So there is a discrepancy in a sense, in that we all know that there are children who didn't engage during the time that they were away from school. So could somebody enlighten me as to what actually happened, and are there particular challenges that still exist as a result of children being out of school?
Thank you, Councillor Munro. No, that's a very valid point, and I think there are actually two distinct parts to the question you posed. Schools do recognise that there's a number of young people who were significantly impacted by COVID in terms of their learning experience and the ability to engage through the home support systems or other, versus those were being more rigorously supported at home. So there's certainly an area there. The schools obviously went above and beyond to try and target those young people, identify them and provide individual specialist support to them where possible, and also where the young person was prepared to engage with the school. And obviously there is a small cohort that were disengaged, and we are aware of those, and schools are working hard to ensure that they are not disadvantaged in the long term. I think, again, the improvement is a combination of factors in terms of the examination process or assessment process has been tailored to the need. There was a number of modules that were taken out of specific qualifications from this year to assist the process. And again, there may be modules in the past that our young people have maybe struggled with. But equally also, when the data has been submitted to the SQA, they then crunch the data and normalise that data so that we're then restricting the number of young people who are awarded the various bandings, etc. Whereas what we were saying is if a young person could demonstrate they had completed the module and they had evidence of their understanding of those skills, then they were accredited with that, which I think is all well and good and should be the case going forward. And again, I think that then further contributes to the basket of awards that they then managed to achieve as a result of that. So it wasn't then unduly downgraded because of the performance across the country. But it kind of links back into the question that Councillor Nimmo raised about the way forward now, and how do we make sure that the process is fair to ensure that all of our young people have their efforts and endeavours recognised, and where they are clearly demonstrating an understanding of a subject that they're duly rewarded for that.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Kerr, then Councillor Murtagh, and again I'll make a plea for brevity. Councillor Kerr.
I'll try, convener. Just that regarding the recommendations, I note that number 1 and agree number 2 and look forward to the spring report. With each of the high schools, each year they become more aware of the issues which each area of education they have, and I'm sure that over the last 2 years that the way that they've been marked as a workload that they never expected to come along to them. So as previous colleagues have said, the work that the teachers have done over the last 2 years, it's not just a matter of getting to the end of the year and doing an exam and that's how you're marked. It's done over the years, and each teacher has to evaluate each child for the full year, which is an extra workload on them. So as other people have said, they'd be commended. And what we don't realise yet, convener, is how important these mobile devices have been during the last year to help these pupils achieve the results. And hopefully when the data comes out in spring and in years to come, that'll be an aspect that will help us understand how they've achieved it. So that's as brief as I want to be, convener. Thank you very much. And thank David and his team for the report.
Okay, thank you. And final speaker, and again, I'd ask for brevity, Councillor Murtagh.
So I'm about to expire myself. I think the thing I wanted to come in on and put some emphasis is about how different these exam results or these results this year, and in some ways they're not exam results, but the point I want to make is about the importance of understanding the demonstrated attainment that these represent for our young people. I probably quite like exams and do pretty well on the spot in exams, but for the young people last year who came back, after a period of being off for a long time, and then were put in a position of demonstrating that attainment in a fairly succinct period, that was an awful lot of pressure. And I know we've got some young people on the call as well. It was very akin to what you would go through in an exam diet, and their achievements and what they went through, I mean, they have demonstrated and earned that, and I think we should emphasise that, because there's a great danger in, kind of saying, oh, these weren't exams, or these weren't fared, or, that we need to understand the remarkable work that our young people did, and that these results in these tables don't reflect even all the qualifications that were achieved in Falkirk either, including from some of our S3s and even S2s as well. And that I would be keen just to make sure that there will also be the national review, but that young people's voices and indeed the teachers are heavily involved in those processes, about how they went through that process, how they felt through that process. Their voices are heard and going forward to shape that new process, because yeah, it's really important that we understand actually what they did go through. And I just want to congratulate them once again on their remarkable achievement, including everybody on the call also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On that, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Move on to our final item, which is Council of the Future, Closer to Home, and I think it is Leslie.
Yes, thank you.
Leslie, sorry, I couldn't see you there, Leslie. That's Leslie James who's going to take this item. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. I'll try and keep with a brevity and succinct theme just to go through this report just now. First of all, happy to be here this afternoon to present the Closer to Home report. Closer to Home is one of Falkirk's Council's top 10 transformational programmes within our current Council of the Future transformational agenda. The project currently consists of 6 active projects who are all managed by a project lead who has also other management and service responsibilities. And these are detailed in 1.1, so alternative family placement, best practice in child protection, family support services, procuring for the future, supported accommodation, and young people at the centre of residential care. Each of the projects in themselves contributes to our overarching aims in the strategy, which is about improving outcomes for our most vulnerable young people, whilst ensuring that our services are sustainable going forward. Closer to Home vision at 3.1 is children's services again. Closer to Home is a children's services strategy with the ambition to improve outcomes for children and young people, and as I say, to ensure sustainability for services. Closer to Home places a strong emphasis on preventative approaches and to provide early help and support to families. The objectives in 3.12 that we want to safely reduce the numbers of children who are looked after away from home, and we've consistently used the reference of safely because we accept and actually have a duty of care to ensure that children who do require protection from our services will continue to receive that, and that we will still see a small number of children who will require care services. We want to shift the balance of care to ensure that those children who are within our care systems have access and opportunities to be in community-based foster care and kinship services. And we want to ensure all our children, including the most vulnerable, will achieve in learning, life and work, and make sure that families are at the centre of decision making and planning for their children. So really that empowerment agenda and making sure that the family's voice and young people's voices are at the centre of our planning. 3.2 outlines the financial benefits. The MTFP that was developed really from the start of our Closer to Home strategy has now been reprofiled over 7 years from 5 years, really because of pandemic fundamentally, but the reprofiled savings are detailed in 3.2 and are further broken down in Appendix 1 as part of the report. 3.3 covers measures of success, and we have a number of achievements to date in terms of recruitment of carers, with 26 additional new carers since 2018, with our new initial response team within our best practice in child protection, with 96% of all new referrals to service screened within the first 24 hours, and a 73% reduction in the backlog of referrals to service that were waiting. And again, with procurement, in terms of now we're at 89% of all our provision is contracted and has been subject to review, and 67% of public sector spend has been reviewed, which is an exercise to be concluded. Section 4 of the report, considerations. The current national policy context for children's services is both complex and challenging, with potential unprecedented change in how public services are governed, structured and delivered. And significant policy developments in relation to the new National Care Service have been proposed, with Children and Justice Service being part of the overall consultation in addition to adult services. Promise has now been developed after 3 years of a review of the system and children's services involving 5,500 care experienced children and young people, and again sets out new challenges for us in terms of how we meaningfully engage and support children and their families. As part of the delivery of the Promise, legislative changes in relation to the rights of brothers and sisters, as detailed in section 5.4, with both cost and resource implications, also need to be further considered. And again, we have just embarked in terms of the new National Child Protection Guidance, excuse me, which has been launched this year with anticipated timescales for implementation over the next 12 months, which again brings about challenges and resource demands in key areas of multi-agency practice and child protection. The National Transfer Scheme for unaccompanied asylum seekers has also been developed to ensure children who are caught up in conflict and political instability are supported to access durable and effective support, including care when separated from their family. So just really to set a context in a very busy policy context for children's services currently. In 4.7, I've noted that the 7th Closer to Home project will become active by November of this year in relation to self-directed support to enable families to determine their own solutions with aligned budgets as part of that empowerment agenda. In relation to risks and dependencies highlighted in the report, key risks are in relation to the legislative changes required in relation to siblings legislations that I mentioned earlier, and work has already started in terms of the fairly recently issued guidance from Scottish Government in terms of cost implications, which has been further worked up and considered. Trade unions' agreements to changes in staff working patterns and terms and conditions has been challenging, and rightly so, and we have developed some strengthened forums in terms of trade union engagement to try and better articulate the vision and aspiration of the transformations that we seek to achieve. So just to conclude, Closer to Home is now in year 3 of implementation and continues to respond to local and national demands to support children. And I would ask Executive to consider the recommendations as stated in 2.1 of the report in relation to noting the progress and achievements of Closer to Home strategy thus far. To note that a report in relation to the service redesign of the initial response team, IRT, the pilot will be taken to Executive in the 2nd quarter of 22-23 for decision, and to note the savings in the revised Closer to Home medium-term financial plan for 22-26. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. I'll go to Councillor Colley.
On the theme of brevity, I'll try to be quite brief. I think the Closer to Home work, I think it's fantastic. I consider myself very lucky that I hear very regularly from Sarah about all the fantastic work going on, and it's great to hear more about it in the committee itself. I think it's been really positive developments, particularly around the initial response team and the work within that to provide earlier decision making and reduce waiting times and getting people help earlier. And I think I'm extremely excited about the work around the seventh stream around self-directed support and working directly with families to try and resolve issues far earlier and get that early intervention and support in with families. I think there's probably a couple of things that and you've highlighted about the question of what the resource implications will be around the siblings legislation. Absolutely the right legislation highlighted in the Promise, highlighted by care experienced people, and be very interested to hear how that develops and what the council will be doing in relation to that. I suppose, and also in relation to the unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people in the National Transfer Scheme, what that might look like going forward, particularly. We've all seen we all saw the scenes in Afghanistan, and what that might look like in terms of the additional support we'll need to provide to young people in this area. But I think I'll just finish by saying, I think that the work has been brilliant, and your team have been your teams across the area have really been going above and beyond, particularly through COVID, and I know that that will come through in the Chief Social Workers report about the work that the teams have been doing. So just thank you very much, and I'm happy to propose the report.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor McHugh.
I would just like to formally second this report and echo everything that Councillor Coley said. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think folks are starting to drop like flies this afternoon, but I'll now open it up for any comments or questions. But I would make a similar plea that for brevity, as folks do have other things this afternoon, and we'll be looking to move on to the next meetings. If there's no questions or comments, maybe lunchtime is calling. Just a comment from myself that this has been an evolution, but it has been done, or it was done at a time where we recognised that we wanted to look to improve the outcomes for our young people, and that was our primary focus. But in doing that, obviously there was the ability to be able to have savings which can then be reinvested back into the services. We have to adapt and react to changes in legislation. Some very welcome legislation, particularly around the promise, and that will be work in progress. But the services redesign has been done in a way in which families and service users are telling us what it is they need and what it is they want. So these services will be co-designed to meet their particular needs for the future, and that is an ethos that is being distributed right throughout the work that the council's doing. And again, we'll link in very much with the key themes within our Falkirk plan, particularly around poverty and reducing the impacts of poverty going forward. So I'm pleased that we have this report here, and that we are starting to see progress. It has been hit with the pandemic, and I think that's a frustration that everybody shares across the board, and not being able to see the progress that we would have liked to as quickly as we would have. But there is a clear plan there for everybody to see, and I think there's a lot of work being put in by the staff, but also in working with the various sectors within our children and families teams, in order to make sure that their voice is heard. So on that, I'll just ask if we're happy to approve the report.
Agreed.
Okay, thanks very much, folks. And that brings us to the end of this morning's Education, Children and Young People's Executive. So can I thank everybody for their attendance, and hope you are now able to have a bite of lunch before your next meetings this afternoon. Thanks very much.